And with that, I think we are live. Had a little hiccup there. Forgot the overlay. But we're back. Bill, how was your holiday?
My holiday went really fast, but it was really good. How was yours?
It was good. Saw
Yeah.
some family, watched some track. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah, me too. A lot of family time, a lot of Star Trek time. Actually, I haven't watched a whole lot like in the last few weeks before the holiday week, and then I got back into the rewatch and I watched a little handful of TOS season 3 and a little bit of Discovery like mixed in there too. Rewatching and even like revisiting some of the shorts. So yeah, it was really good. It was relaxing and it felt good to dive back into the Trek stuff after a few weeks kind of being away from it. Yeah, and happy to be back. First show of 2019. We've been away for a couple of weeks now. I know you did a STO stream.
Yeah.
I want to say last weekend, right?
Yep.
So it's been a little less time for you.
Yep.
You've had some airtime more recently, but it feels good to be back on and talking Star Trek on Trek Live.
Yep. Yeah. Speaking of, what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about the last short trek of the year, The Escape Artist, which premiered a couple nights ago, about Harry Mudd. And we're going to kind of spin off of that conversation. We'll cover that and give our thoughts on that, and then talk about what sorts of short treks we'd like to see, like in an imaginary universe where you could kind of do one for anybody in Star Trek history. Like, and I think for me, I'm thinking a lot along the lines of the Saru one, the Brightest Star. Like, we kind of talked about like, which characters would really benefit from a short trek that kind of emphasizes their backstory, sort of the way Saru had with the Brightest Star from last month. So we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about like which characters we think we'd like to see, a short trek treatment for their backstory. And I'd like to just talk about the short treks as a whole, I guess. Now that we've seen all four, just kind of sum it up. What do we think of the format? Maybe rank the four short treks now that they're all done. So it's going to be a short treks kind of episode. Just kind of cover everything speculative and like hypothetical short trek and sum up the short treks that we've gotten for Discovery. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm anxious to hear what you think of The Escape Artist, which we're going to do first and foremost. But before we get to that, I know you've been watching a lot of Trek. You've sent me a couple of like snaps that have kind of like surprised me at how quickly you're moving through season 5 of TNG. So how far are you? What have you watched in the last like few weeks?
Yeah, so I took the holiday time to kind of jump back into TNG. I'm cruising through season 5. An episode I just watched last night was my last episode. It was I, Borg. So yeah, it's
cool.
Yeah, I'm almost wrapping up season 5. So it should be fun.
Yeah, you've only got like 3 left, maybe.
Yeah.
3 or 4 left.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot of like interesting highlights in that back half of season 5. You think of episodes like I've Worried, the one you just watched, is definitely a juicy one with a lot to talk about. Cause and Effect is a fan favorite.
Love that.
You like that one?
Yeah, I loved it.
Good. The First Duty is really popular. People really like that one. The Outcast is popular for the most part. Conundrum's kind of a fun one with the memory loss. And, that's kind of like a high concept, like cool science fiction episode.
Yep.
Which episodes kind of stood out for you? Like, are there any that you really liked when you hit them, or?
Here, let me check here.
Yeah. There's a lot. I think it's mostly good episodes in season 5. There's really not too many hiccups.
Yeah, I was just surprised that a lot of episodes. I mean, to me, a lot of these episodes were just strong. I think that's why I kind of got on such a roll. I was surprised at Ethics. I kind of forgot that episode a little bit and what all transpires. So yeah, and I love Klingon-based episodes, obviously. So with Worf, it was cool to see.
That's a heavy episode. There's a lot of like big dramatic stuff happening in it. I think this period of TNG is probably when, like just thinking about like some of the episodes I just mentioned in ethics that you just brought up, you know, really prime example of like that Swiss Army knife idea where like really wide range of like styles and genres, like cause and effect could not be more different than like Cost of Living, which it is an episode I'm not that big on. But it's like they're like completely different shows. And like ethics is completely different than like, you know, The First Duty. Like they're just different kinds of storytelling. Different, like most shows are not trying to cover that much ground in terms of like tone and genre. So that's kind of what I always take away from like this middle portion of TNG, where they're really kind of hammering home that idea that we can kind of do anything, that there's no limitation to the sorts of stories we can tell. Were there any stinkers? Were there
I didn't like Imaginary Friend.
That's a bad one.
And The Perfect Mate is like, I don't know. But the thing I've noticed, especially with season 5, it was, you know, season 4 did have those big classic episodes. But to me, it almost feels like season 5 is a little bit more consistent with just solid episodes rather than, oh, you know, that's a classic. So.
Yeah. Well, it shows because you've definitely, and I know like life circumstances contribute a lot, like how busy you are and what you have going on, like how quickly you move through it. But you've definitely hammered home season 5 pretty quickly. It wasn't that long ago that you started that. So the pacing on the rewatch was noticeably faster on season 5, which I think might tell the story a little bit with how consistent it is. And
exactly.
How's
your rewatch going?
Good. I watched the first 6 episodes of season 3 of TOS. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I love the Enterprise incident. I think that's like the sort of outlier in season 3 that is an episode that could almost fit in the other 2 seasons and not like feel like in season 3 it really stands out as like, wow, that's a really, really strong episode. Season 3 doesn't always reach that height for me. That like the Enterprise incident represents. Like there's so much depth to that episode with like Spock and the Romulan commander. There's so many like conflicting emotions happening with Spock, and he really sells like the sort of straddling temptation and duty and kind of blurring the lines a little bit. So I really, really like that episode, and it's got a fun like action adventure story with trying to steal the cloaking device and Kirk being a covert like spy, pretending to be dead and sneaking back onto the ship as a Romulan. And there's a lot of fun stuff in it. But when I think of it, like the first thing that pops into my mind is the Spock Romulan commander scenes.
Yes.
Where they're kind of courting each other and playing each other a little bit. But you have like a high like that, and even like Spectre of the Gun, I think is actually kind of fun. That's the Western, like really minimal set kind of episode. It's got really good cinematography. I love the way that episode looks. I think they really take advantage of the limitations with sets to make them look creepy and weird and kind of play up the idea that these are like half-formed illusions. Episodes like that I really like, and then there are real stinkers like Spock's Brain and the Children Shall Lead. But I think the most memorable thing from like this period of the rewatch is when I posted my review of Spock's Brain. There were a lot of people who kind of chimed back and were like, "You're too tough on it. It's not that bad." And it always surprises me whenever I hit Spock's Brain. Like there are a lot of people out there who kind of are contrarian to the idea that it's like bottom feeder, like worst ever Star Trek. I've always kind of agreed with that notion. I think it's pretty terrible. I think there are things in the beginning of it that I can kind of tolerate, and there's some neat ideas. Like I do really like. There's a scene where Kirk and the crew on the bridge, like they're in front of the view screen, and they have like 3 planets up on the screen, and they're trying to figure out like which planet is most likely to be the one they need to go to, and they're kind of debating it and talking about like the where each planet stands and like the historical, you know, like where they are in their development. Like there's those scenes really work for me. But once they get down into the planet and they're down underground with, you know, the women, the morgue, I guess they're called, and things start happening. Spock comes down and is like robot Spock. That is really, really bad to me. Like I just can't deal with it. It's funny. There are definitely like campy moments, and it makes me laugh. But it's I think it's horrendous on most levels. But I always enjoy the conversation, like the different back and forth conversations that kind of offshoot off of the thing I post about it when I say I really don't like it. I like reading, you know, people's takes on Spock's brain a lot, because there are more divergent opinions than I tend to remember. And the Children Shall Lead is not an episode with a whole lot of divergent opinion. You post that and you say it's awful, and you just get a whole bunch of echoes like, "Yep, that's the worst ever."
Yep.
So it's like loaded with terrible child actor performances, and shower curtain lawyer that Enterprise Extra dubs him Gorgon. It's really bad. It's really, really bad. Yep. And it probably is the worst ever. So yeah, like it's in that first 6 episodes of season 3, it's like the high of Enterprise Incident and the low of And the Children Shall Lead, like right back to back even. So it's a inconsistent up and down kind of thing. But I'm really glad to be back into it. I have been like watching Discovery here and there, or, you know, trying to get ready for season 2. Definitely rewatching season 1 leading up to that. So I have a little bit of that mixed in, but we'll talk about that in the future. Yeah. So we're both kind of moving along in the swing of our rewatches. I didn't watch anything last night. I'm hoping maybe watch something tonight. I have something today, but when I get back, maybe watch an episode or 2. But yeah, definitely really looking forward to getting through season 3 and into the TOS movies and into TNG. I'm really excited to watch TNG like you are right now this year, because I guess the idea is for the Picard show to premiere towards the end of 2019. So definitely my goal is to, you know, get through TNG over the course of this year and be ready completely for the Picard show at some point here in 2019. So yeah, a lot of good stuff to come.
Yep.
And yeah, it'll be fun. And I know you're further into it. You've been watching it for a while now, but I'm looking forward to watching TNG kind of with the idea in my head of like, there's more Picard coming, you know, like trying to, you know, watch it with the idea that, you know, some of these threads that, you know, weave through the show, some of these little character beats might come back, you know,
explored
like,
later on.
That might be interesting to see picked up later. And, you know, if it's the same creative team behind Discovery, with the stuff they're doing with like picking up on threads from the original series and, you know, backdoor developing them, you know, they're obviously interested in doing that kind of thing. So I have like no doubt that there are going to be things in TNG that like make their way into the new Picard show. So I'm just really, really excited to watch TNG with that sort of hat on, looking for those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you to start it because it just brings more Twitter rankings and stuff that we can talk about of stuff that I just watched. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that'll be the first time we're like in the same space watching the same show right around the same time. You're going to be probably coming up on the end of TNG as I'm like getting into it, but like we're right there, you know, in the same show at the same time, right around that same time. So that'll be good. I'm looking forward to that, being able to talk to you about stuff that you just watched. Really freshly. So excited to do that. 2019 is going to be really good for the rewatch, Trek Live, all this stuff is going to be good. So looking forward to it. I guess do we want to start with the Escape Artist?
Let's dive into the Escape Artist.
Cool. What did you think?
I loved it.
Me too.
It was really fun. I loved it. I think it had the perfect balance of making it funny and making it feel like a Discovery Mud episode. But it also had callbacks to past series, and I love when they do that delicate balance.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Agreed.
Loved it.
I thought I loved it too. I really, really enjoyed it. I've watched it twice now. I think it might be the most ambitious of them from like a production standpoint. When you think of like the number of characters that they have like spread throughout it, they have, you know, obviously Mud and the Tellarite bounty hunter, but there's that female bounty hunter. There's the Orions. Like there's a lot of different stuff happening in it. There's a lot of aliens in it. A lot of different sets. You know, I thought the Tellarite bounty ship, like the merchant ship, was really cool. I thought that was a cool set, that bridge. You got to see, I mean, it was the same set as the Discovery, but you like saw another ship, like Federation ship. I thought that was cool. And yeah, I thought it had a really TOS kind of sense of humor to it. Like it wasn't afraid to be funny, which no surprise. It's Rainn Wilson directing it, and it's a Harry Mudd story. There's obviously going to be humor, but he really leaned into that. I thought like the sort of goofy, campy kind of humor, and I thought it really worked. I thought it gave me hope for kind of Discovery moving forward. Actually, that it can be funny, like that they're not going to be afraid to be
more serious.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought Rainn Wilson was great. I thought the actor, I don't know the actor's name, I didn't look it up, who played the Tellarite captain. I thought he was really good. I thought they had a really good chemistry back and forth, because it's largely just the two of them, right? For the most part, like there's really cool like flashbacks to Mud in these different situations. But for the most part, it's a twofer. It's these two actors going back and forth. I thought they did a really good job.
I loved that the underlying like the storyline about like this is definitely gonna be heavy in spoilers. Was kind of sci-fi and like also, but also at the same time it was something that I could see actually Harry Mudd doing. So
absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely like the sort of con he's playing is totally credible with him. Like it's in line with what you know about Harry Mudd and the sorts of things he's capable of. Going back to TOS, definitely made me think of iMud, which is the one where he's on the planet with the androids. It raises all these kinds of questions about like, you know, are the Mud? I saw somebody, I can't take credit for this, but like somebody on Twitter posted that like was the Mud that Kirk was dealing with the real Mud?
Yeah, exactly.
Like bouncing around and getting himself into trouble. It leads to all kinds of interesting questions that I thought were really kind of cool. I really, really loved it a lot. I was surprised. I was looking forward to it because I love Rainn Wilson. I'm watching The Office right now too on like the side, so I'm like definitely in a Rainn Wilson kind of mood. So I was looking forward to it, but you know, coming off of the Saru one, which is like so based on a character that I really love and is part of the show, you know, part of me was like, maybe it'll be like just an interesting side thing because it's not like one of our characters, but I should have known better because it was Mudd and Rainn Wilson, and Calypso wasn't about anybody we knew, and I loved that. So I loved it more than I even kind of expected to coming into it. But the things that impressed me the most about it were honestly like the ambition of it. I Rainn Wilson really got to sink his teeth into the production value. I was surprised and impressed at how much stuff he had going on with it, with different big like set pieces and the even like the flashback structure of it. Like it was cool. Like it wasn't just like two actors standing there. Like I said, a lot of it is like the Tellarite and Mudd with their kind of back and forth. Mudd trying to weasel his way out of the situation, but it does get to flex its muscles a little bit with
the flashbacks
and telling different little side stories with situations Mudd's been in the past or other. That's the other thing I wasn't clear on. Like, and it's just interesting to think about. Like, are those other things that he was thinking about? Are they other androids?
Or was that
like real Mudd background stuff? Like, who knows?
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter. I mean, totally believable either way, I guess. You know, from what we know about Mudd, he's always kind of bouncing around in these kinds of situations, but leads one to wonder if those stories were other androids or really him. Did you like the twist? Like the android thing at the end? Like, were you into that? Like, did you? I know I didn't see it coming. I didn't have any like. It's gonna be that. Did you expect a twist? Did you think?
I did not expect a twist, but once like it kind of unfolded, I realized that Mudd was probably behind it or something like that. But yeah, I enjoyed the twist, which is definitely tough in this style of like storytelling and the structure of how they a short track is tough to do. So I appreciate that they, like you said, were very ambitious with it, but also made a kind of fun twist at the end. So
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I didn't see a twist coming. I didn't know where it was going.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sitting there waiting for some kind of curveball. But I liked it. I was really there were little like cute little nods. Like one of the Mudds in the room is wearing like the exact same costume that Mudd wears, and I Mudd.
Yeah.
Like there are little fun little winks to the audience that you kind of appreciated. Which definitely leads you like that. Definitely like gave me added thought that some of these Mudds that we've seen in the past might be androids.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's one of those other examples. Like I know I've mentioned it in the past. Like one of my favorite things about like what Discovery's doing is that it's taking things like the Sarek Spock relationship that you see in Journey to Babel and even beyond that, like into the show, and adding this extra flavor to it and added context to it. That's making 50-year-old stories feel sort of new again, and gives you like for something that gets rewatched as often as Star Trek does by people like us who like continually go back to it. It's really cool to take these like 50-year-old stories that we've been watching for years and years and years, and are going to be watching for years and years and years, and giving them new things that kind of to like ornaments to hang on them that just give them a little bit of a different look and different flavor. Now when you go back and you watch like the Harry Mudd episodes from TOS, there's something a little extra to think about. It's not just same old stuff. Like it's giving like when you watch Journey to Babel, you have Lethe in the back of your mind, and now when you watch I Mudd and Mudd's Women, you're gonna have this in the back of your mind. And I love that. I think that's really kind of cool and really important to keep the original series like alive and relevant, moving even further 50 years into the future, because it's people have seen it so many times and people have it memorized. People have seen it. The people who have watched it since it premiered, like people who have been with it forever, know it like the back of their hand a lot. So things like this are really cool to see. To keep it relevant, keep it changing and evolving over time. Yeah. So definitely really appreciate that they're doing that.
How do these rank?
How do they rank?
Yes. How do they rank?
That's a good question. I'm pretty comfortable saying Calypso is my favorite.
Okay.
I think I've watched that one the most of the four over the last few months since they've premiered, and I'm pretty comfortable putting Runaway last. So the question is Brightest Star or The Escape Artist, and that's tough because they're so radically different. Like they're complete. That's the Swiss Army knife thing. Like they're complete. They have nothing in common other than taking place in this universe. Right now, sitting here this morning, I'd probably say The Escape Artist, because maybe it's just because it's newer and it's it's got like that fun afterglow to it. But that could change over time. So right now, I think I would say Calypso, The Escape Artist, Brightest Star, and Runaway.
Okay.
What about you? Where do you
I would confidently say that is my list as well. Calypso, obviously my favorite, which I didn't expect to like that the most.
Yeah, me neither.
Which is great and like a kind of a good change. And then I would say Escape Artist, A Brightest Star, and then Runaway. I'll definitely probably rewatch them kind of later on down the road. Maybe we will revisit that at a later date. Sure. But yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying that's my list. I think just kind of moving the conversation into like an overall like were these short treks successful? And I think definitely yes. So yeah.
Yeah, I think they were successful in a lot of different. I think there might be, especially when it comes to Tilly and Runaway and Saru and The Brightest Star. I think there are probably things in those stories that are gonna echo into season 2, so we might not even know how much we appreciate them yet. Maybe, maybe less so. Maybe you never know. Maybe Calypso will echo like way down the line. You know, whenever the show wraps up. Maybe that'll pay off even more. And I'm sure we'll see Mud again at some point. So these things are like continuing the story and hopefully going to link to things in the future, which I think is cool. But certainly from a standpoint of, Discovery has been away since last February, but we've had these little tastes since September. So like once a month we get these little, little taste testers of Trek that kind of bridge this gap. And I think it's really successful in that way, like to kind of keep you hungry for it and keep it alive during these like extended hiatuses. Back in the day with like network TV, when Star Trek would go off the air for the summer, it was for the summer. Like it would end in May or June and it would come back in September. So there wasn't a whole lot of time for like this dead time. This is the way TV is now. You have maybe a year, and I think it's really successful at keeping the show in people's minds and keeping it relevant during that extended absence. And I hope they continue to use them in the future. I hope they keep the idea alive and maybe use them to like bridge gaps between shows. I think we've talked about that before as we've talked about short treks. I think they're perfect for that, like to have them in the bag and ready to go for like these little periods of time where you might not have anything else going on. And it allows you to play with genre in a really cool kind of way. Just look at the 4 that we got. They're all radically different. They're all very independently their own thing. Sorts of stories they're telling are all different, and they all kind of play with genre in their own way. I think it's cool that it gives them that. It's something like the Escape Artist. They're never going to tell like dedicate an entire episode to just Mud. Like just out there on his own, doing his thing with like no context from the crew. Like getting a purely Mud story is probably only going to happen in a format like this. So I'd say that's the most successful thing about it. On top of just keeping it alive during the hiatus. That they get to do these kinds of offshoot kind of ideas.
Allows them to kind of explore and experiment on different stories and stuff like that. Definitely. Yeah. Totally get that. What first came to mind when you said when we kind of started trying to work this topic of what in past Trek would benefit from these kind of short Trek kind of treatment, I guess you'd say. Yeah.
Well, for me, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of these characters have, like, from Trek history, especially not so much from TOS. It's hard to find, just because we don't know a whole lot about characters' backstories in TOS. Like they don't spend a lot of time during TOS proper calling back to like what happened to them in the past. But TNG forward, they definitely do. A lot of these characters have rich backstories that get referenced, and you know where they came from, but you never see it. Like there's always something. One of the cool things about like Discovery, I remember talking about at the very beginning, is like those first couple of episodes, like Vulcan Hello and Battle of Binary Stars. Like it kind of like they act as sort of like a character like Tom Paris, who's definitely on my list, like gets himself into trouble and is in prison. Like in old school Trek, a story like that would be just backstory, but in Discovery you actually get to see like what happened to Burnham, like why she is in the situation she's in. They're almost all of the characters from TNG onward have some sort of backstory that's alluded to throughout their series. So there's a really deep bench of people to go to, but to be honest, the first one that came to mind for me was actually like a twofer. I would like to see a short Trek about Riker and Troy, like their breakup before, like, especially in early TNG, they talked about it a lot, like that they were together, and Riker chose his career and had to leave and didn't say goodbye. Like, there were like cold things happening, and I think that's a story that I think a short trek could, shed some light on and add some context to. That's the first one that came to mind. I'd like to know a little more about what happened between them. Like, what was their relationship like, and what led Riker to make that choice, I guess.
Yeah.
What about you? Was there one that came to mind, like, first and foremost?
The Tom Paris kind of came to mind.
Saw your thunder. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
No, I just think that there's definitely a lot of meat on the bone there as far as the character and his backstory, because we don't know very much of how he got to kind of the first Tom Paris we see. So I think that would be just because I feel like why it came to mind is because one of my favorite characters, and kind of all these rest of these picks kind of reflect that.
Sure.
But yeah, first thing that came to mind, Tom Paris. There's a bunch of different things we could kind of explore and add to kind of his character and Voyager itself. So
sure, absolutely. Yeah, he's definitely one that came to mind very quickly for me too, because his backstory is so rich. And it's such a part of who he is.
Yeah.
The demons he's kind of running away from and trying to better himself from throughout that show, and are just such a big part of who that character is. It's not just, window dressing backstory. It's not just something to give color to the character at the beginning and tell you where they came from. Like, no, this is something that's very present all the way through the show.
Right.
And really defining who he is. So I figured he was probably going to be on your list. I figured he would weigh heavily for you, because I know you're a big fan of the character. But the obvious one for me would be like how did he get in trouble with the Maquis? Like that whole, like,
yes, how do you wrapped up with that? Yeah, why is he in prison? Yeah, his relationship with his dad. Yeah, just so many so many things you could explore with that character. So
exactly, yeah. Like there's even like that's something you could do, like, very in an isolated way. Like how did he get to the Maquis and how did he get in trouble? Like, how did he get caught? Like, that whole thing is definitely like a really ripe story. But if memory serves, in Caretaker, they talk about he got originally kicked out of Starfleet by he was on a mission. He made a bad call, and
Nick Lozano. I mean, Tom Paris.
Yeah, Tom Paris. He got some crewmates into some trouble or killed. So it was a really bad situation. So there's like these multiple little, like, stories that you could tell about what, and his relationship with his dad. Like, clearly there was, like, major underlying issues there that probably played into a lot of these things. So yeah, you could maybe make a case that he's got as good of a backstory and as rich of a backstory as anybody in the entire franchise. Like, there's as much there to think about as any of these characters. So he's a really good obvious one that I would love to see get a short trek or two. Who else came to mind for you?
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of stick with the Voyager.
Sure.
This wasn't one that came to mind at first, but the more I thought about it, it's like, yeah, this could be fun. I'd love to see a Chakotay short trek, just because if memory serves me, he was involved with Starfleet and then went to the Maquis. You kind of mentioned Maquis as well. I think that would be kind of a fun short trek to do, because it would add to kind of his context of his whole thing that he deals with in Voyager. So yeah, Chakotay would be a cool idea as well for me.
Yeah, he was I think he was a lieutenant commander or something. Like, he was a fairly high ranking officer.
Yeah.
First officer. Like, he was a respected Starfleet officer who had a career, was on a good track.
Yeah.
And left because of what happened with Maquis. Like, how they came when the Maquis were born, he felt like he was pulled away and had to deal with that. So yeah, I think a short trek that like kind of focused on that choice, and like in that point in Starfleet history when the Maquis happened, like kind of showing Chakotay's, you know, decision making process, I guess. Like how does he react to, you know, the news of, you know, selling off these colonies to the Cardassians? Like, you know, how does he get to that point where he leaves and goes and becomes a Maquis heavyweight?
Yeah.
So yeah, Chakotay. Voyager's got quite a few.
Yes.
Voyager's characters are kind of ripe with interesting backstories.
Yeah.
That show they did a really nice job of talking a lot about where these characters came from, and I think we've talked about in the past. You know, Voyager's definitely a show about like this band of
misfits,
that find each other and form a family. So because the show leans into that idea that, you know, they're misfits. They're people that often come from, you know, challenging pasts. Just kind of go along with the Voyager theme. Neelix is one for me.
Yes.
Keep in mind, you know, he's clearly, he's clearly got like a long line of experiences, and I think it would kind of go like hand in hand with what we saw the other night with the Escape Artist. Like I think you could play with genre and do kind of fun, you know, goofy, silly kinds of stories with things that Neelix has been doing in the past. But he's also got really heavy stuff too. Like if you go further back and you talk about like what happened during the war and his time, the Talaxian
you could
conflict.
You could almost do like a Brightest Star kind of style episode of what you just mentioned, the war and, you know, their whole history as a species, not just Neelix, but
definitely.
Yeah.
So he's another really that's a character that honestly did come to mind fairly quickly for me too. Tom Paris, Neelix, Riker Troy, all were pretty early, like, quick instinct responses. You know, you're absolutely right. Like you could go really heavy and really like Saru style, Brightest Star, or you could go, you know, the first time you see Neelix in Caretaker, he's like you know, he's in a freighter, he's selling junk, he's
taking baths.
They definitely lean heavily into like the comedic relief stuff, and he's obviously that throughout the entire show. But the first time you see him, you don't know about all the heavy stuff yet, and the stuff he's doing like immediately before he gets to Voyager lends itself to, I think, Escape Artist style, you know, maybe some silly, you know, lighthearted kind of storytelling. What's a junk dealer do in the Delta Quadrant, like bouncing around from system to system, selling, you know, one person's garbage and, you know, trying to profit off of it. So I think Neelix is really rich for something like this.
Totally agree.
Another one that I think kind of goes hand in hand with him a little bit from a different show is Quark. Actually, like Quark, they kind of talk about. I think at one point during the show, they mentioned that he was like a cook on a Ferengi freighter. Like you could definitely sort of another like Escape Artist kind of story, something, you know, silly, light, with the sort of thing Quark was doing before he got the bar and like settled into that life. Like what kinds of things was he trying to do to become a successful, you know, Ferengi businessman, leading up to the bar, and what kind of challenges did he have to deal with to get to that? Or how did he get the bar? Like maybe, you know, like there might be some interesting stories, I guess, to tell there. So Neelix and Quark kind of went hand in hand with me. Very different characters and very different shows, obviously, but I think they both kind of lended themselves to some potentially like comedic kinds of stories.
I guess keeping with Deep Space Nine, I love to see like an early Ben Sisko. You know, whether that be, you know, like pre The Family Man, you know, or Utopia Planitia, or something like that. I think it would be kind of a fun kind of short track idea to see how he got from, you know, Starfleet officer to like badass, you know, war hero, I guess. So yeah, I think that would be fun to do, an early Ben Sisko short track.
Yeah, I mean, Ben Sisko's as interesting as they come. With there's all kinds of interesting things there, like with, you know, being he's partially sort of, they get into some, I don't know how well you remember because it's been a while since you watched Deep Space Nine in its entirety, but at the end of the show they talk about, you know, his mother was partially or fully wormhole alien kind of, sort of like. So there's like this big destiny kind of theme with him, like sort of being directed towards a certain place. His life was kind of on a track, like, so there's all kinds of like interesting themes that I think you could explore with him in his early life. Like you said, meeting Jennifer, like early family, kind of like what was he before all that stuff happened? Before Jennifer died, and maybe became a little more hardened. There's a couple years there between what happens in The Best of Both Worlds, like during Wolf 359, where he loses Jennifer, and when he gets to Deep Space Nine. So, like, you know, what was he doing in that middle portion? Like, where is he right before Emissary? You know, he's at a pretty dark place in the beginning of Deep Space Nine. So, he's another one, sort of like Tom Paris, where I think there are like these multiple points along the line in his life that would really benefit from something like this. And we know enough about his backstory to have multiple points to kind of point to and be like, yeah, that'd be an interesting time to kind of explore. So Sisko's definitely a good pick. TNG one that came to mind for me that I would like is Data at the Academy. Like, what's Cadet Data look like? Learning about, like, you know, he's pretty childlike and clueless in the beginning of TNG, so hard to imagine what he would be like. Like, and he's a lieutenant commander then. He's like far down the line. Like, he's been an officer for a while. So, you know, who helped him through the academy? Like, who was his you know, who did he lean on? Like, how did he get through that? Like, something I'd love to know a little more about, you know, his early life, and, you know, what's Data's childhood look like. So that's a TNG one that came to mind pretty early for me. I've always been kind of interested in where did he come from and what did his early development look like beyond, you know, being on that colony that got wiped out. You know, what happens after that.
A TNG one for me. I'd love to see like an early Picard and Jack Crusher, like in it came to mind because going through TNG, I can feel like this like deep friendship that Beverly and Picard have. So I'd love to see how you know, the Jack Crusher dynamic built that, I guess, and see Picard with hair. So.
Would be cool to see. That's definitely going. Picard's obviously another one with a really rich backstory. That there are these multiple points that I think would be interesting. Picard and Jack Crusher obviously is a great one that would really benefit the show. I think, like you said, to get a little more context about, you know, why Picard and Beverly have this relationship. You know, why there's a lot of tension there. Like, you know, there's a lot of, you know, unspoken stuff bubbling beneath the surface. That would be cool to explore. Where did it all come from? And you know, that'd be great. Picard on the Stargazer was something that was mentioned on by the Minnesota Star Trek podcast. He suggested that, and I agree with that too. I think that'd be cool to see. Picard is, you know, we kind of see it a little bit, I guess, in Tapestry, which you haven't gotten to in season 6 yet, where he flashes back to Q and is in getting ready to graduate from the academy and talking about the choices he's made in life and everything. Like, but he's got, you know, he was like a rogue guy early in his career until he got stabbed through the heart and had to start making different kinds of choices. Seeing that, you know, maybe, you know, we see kind of what leads up to that, and up until he gets injured and has to kind of adjust his the way he lives, I guess. But maybe like right after that, like seeing that adjustment period, seeing him, you know, coping with, you know, what happens to him, would be kind of interesting. There's a lot of juicy stuff with Picard. Obviously, he's a really deep, rich character. You know? So, Anybody else on your list?
Yeah, I have, and this could be either Kelvin Timeline or Prime Timeline. Christopher Pike. I think is an interesting character, especially. I'll just kind of start with Kelvin timeline. How did he get to be like this old salt of a captain, where he's so, knowledgeable and put in command of the Enterprise and stuff like that? And also, in Prime timeline is how did the Spock and Pike relationship kind of get built up? So I think that would be fun to kind of explore.
For sure.
Yeah, which can harken back to TOS, Discovery, obviously, and then Kelvin timeline. So I think that has a bunch of ties they could explore, like many of these that we've mentioned.
Yeah, Pike is probably the thing that I'm most excited about in season 2 of Discovery, because he's a character that's really interesting, and we hear a lot about, like, but not a lot of detail. Like he's a big presence, and he's kind of like this holy thing in Star Trek history, I guess. But there's really so little context to him that he's ripe for more stuff, more development.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get that in Discovery. So yeah, he's definitely somebody that would benefit from just a little more context to his backstory and why he is the way he is. And like you said, we get these different tastes of him in the Kelvin timeline, where he's very distinctive and one of the better characters in that series. I think he's really, really good in 09 and even Into Darkness when he's in it at the beginning. He's got some of the best scenes in that movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's as good of a choice as any. And he was mentioned actually in some of the response on Twitter. There's a user, Captain Kirk, mentioned Pike as a person who would benefit from some backstory.
Yeah.
A TOS one that I would throw out there, the one that like I kind of said at the beginning, little things that we know. Kirk, you get a little bit of backstory here and there, missions he was on in the past, ships he was on in the past. You hear about things here and there, but we know really nothing about Dr. McCoy's backstory at all. But just the way that character is, and the way he's like so kind of not Starfleet in every way, like he's not like a Starfleet lifer. I would want to know, like, where did this guy come from? Like, what was he doing before he got on the Enterprise with Kirk? Like, what's his relationship with Kirk? Like, you never really know anything. You never learn anything. You do in the Kelvin timeline a little bit.
Yeah.
But they were at the Academy together. Like, they delve into that. But the original series never really goes there.
No.
So I guess I'm thinking more along the lines of like TOS, DeForest Kelley, Dr. McCoy. I would love to know just a little bit more about who this guy was before the Enterprise and what did his life look like. There's a lot, because he's TOS and there's 50 years of speculative and books and all this other stuff out there. A lot of talk about, like, he's got DeForest Kelley would always wear like his wedding ring. So there's a lot of, there were books written about an ex-wife, and you obviously got that in Kelvin timeline too. Like they put that into that. But well before 2009 existed, there was talk of like Dr. McCoy. There's a wife out there. There was an undeveloped story apparently that it was in The Way to Eden, the episode with the space hippies, the way the episode actually happened, it was Chekhov with like an old lover from the Academy, like an old girlfriend. But originally it was going to be Dr. McCoy's daughter.
Okay.
The way that story was originally kind of cracked open and was getting developed, but they abandoned that idea. So there's all this like interesting stuff that never really happened with McCoy's backstory that I would like to see played with a little bit.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just think that the character's so kind of dynamic and different than the rest of the crew, in that he's not like Mr. Starfleet in the original series, career officer kind of guy. Like, I never get that impression from him. I get that he's there kind of maybe because he has to be, or not that he like he's forced there or anything, but he's there by, not necessarily like living the life like this is what I dreamt of, kind of thing. I think there's just a lot of room for exploration there that I'd love to see. But
an Enterprise one that I'll mention. I'd love to do like a founding of the Federation.
Sure.
That could be a bunch of different characters. It doesn't have to be a specific one. That's one that came to mind also when I thought of something with kind of Enterprise, because I feel like that is a big moment. And again, it has a lot of the roots and stuff, or different aspects that carry out through the whole, universe.
Yeah, definitely, and that's I would love to. That's probably the one that I would be excited to see out of it talked about, because that's like where Enterprise was kind of, I think, aiming to end up.
Yeah.
That we never quite saw where it was going to go. We never saw the landing point, like the designed ending for where it would end up. But yeah, that would have been like the moment. It's like the founding of the Federation that kind of is the backbone of everything that comes after.
Yeah.
And the idea that is Star Trek, you know, kind of in its most pure form. Yeah, so I couldn't agree more with that. That's a big one that I think could benefit a lot of the different characters and would benefit Star Trek as a whole. Yeah. Everything that came after it, I think, would have been a little extra colorful with, you know, where the Federation come from. Like, you know, how did it actually, you know, form? Yeah, so definitely a good one. Love to see some Enterprise love. I didn't pick any real Enterprise characters somehow, some way. I had a hard time landing on one that was like a natural.
Yeah, Phlox was also on my short list, just because he has like so many different avenues you explore. And, yeah, so I think he would be on mine, as besides the one that I just mentioned. Those are my two Enterprise picks. So
yeah, love to see like what family life on that planet looks like.
Yeah,
3 wives, 3 husbands. You know, just that sort of like everybody's connected idea, family, I guess. Yeah, the way that spider web goes out.
Yeah,
everybody's got 3. It's
kind
of unusual. But that would be cool to see. I mean, that's a different alien idea that we never really got to explore. Like that's one of those kinds of like potential things that Enterprise offered that for, you know, I don't know if eventually down the road, if it would have had 7 seasons, maybe we would have gotten something, but never quite got there. And a short trek kind of exploring something with that or anything. With Phlox is another one that you kind of really get the impression that Phlox has like a really deep set of experiences. Like he's been in a lot of places. He's done a lot of things. He's an experienced person who's lived a long time and has seen a lot of things. So, you know, there's all kinds of stories you can tell with him. Like not just the obvious, like what's his family life look like. So how do you become friends with Dr. Lucas, his pen pal? Like there's all kinds of neat things. Like is that like the end to like being interested in humanity and it's a good pick.
Do you have any other ones you want to cover? Or?
Some of the ones that were mentioned on Twitter over the course of the last couple of weeks. Prime Lorca was mentioned a couple different times by people. Tyler Howitt and Suzanne Vander Heeden. Might spell that wrong. I don't know. Both mentioned Lorca.
Okay.
But that was a popular pick, and I get that. I think that would be a backstory to see. I think either one, Prime or Mirror, like what happened to Mirror Lorca right when he arrived. Like how did he figure that out?
Yeah.
And I'd love to see like what happened to Prime Lorca, like right after he got to the Mirror universe. Like that's a ripe story that I hope maybe we see someday. And unlike some of these, that's a story that realistically maybe we could see. Like that could happen feasibly. A little more feasibly than a lot of these other ones we're picking. Another one that got mentioned was Rob mentioned Kira and Dukat, both sort of like their involvement with the Bajoran occupation. I think they both have really rich backstories as well, and they're really good, obvious, like great choices. With really good backgrounds. You're seeing Kira, the resistance fighter, seeing Dukat, you get a little bit of it in flashbacks, on Terok Nor, running the show, overseeing the occupation. You get little tastes of it, but there's all kinds of angles to that you could explore. He mentioned Garak too. You know,
that's another classic.
Garak, he is, but I kind of have mixed feelings about it. Like I think the strength of Garak's character is that you don't know.
That's true.
Telling you what he did, I think, might
take away from his actual his character. I
like not knowing what's true. with Garrick. The less I know about, his background. Like, I like being in the same boat that the Starfleet officers are on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Like they get there, he's there, and you don't know anything about anything beyond, the period of time that you've known him.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the pick because he's fascinating, and there is so much there to explore. But that's just like personal preference for me, I guess. He also mentioned Porthos, which is cute. Who doesn't love Porthos?
Yeah.
So yeah, like we mentioned before, there's all kinds of really good picks. One last one, I guess I'll throw out there. Noticing, I guess neither one of us has mentioned him, is Odo. His early days when he gets discovered. It'll probably be a depressing story. That he gets experimented on, and but like that story of that Bajoran doctor figuring out that he's intelligent, and figuring out how to communicate with him, I think is an interesting story to maybe tell. So yeah, I think like we've kind of figured out, I think maybe Deep Space Nine and maybe did the best jobs with the majority of their characters, giving them really rich backstories that are really ripe for these kinds of treatments. Because we mentioned a good chunk of a lot of those characters, and I think there are probably more that we're not thinking of that if we had all day, we could cover them all.
But I think I feel like even all the shows I feel like have those characters that have kind of rich unknown backstories. Guinan and TNG, or you mentioned Garrick. So I think each series has its own set of few characters that, well, all of them, but that have really deep backstories that would be fun to explore and would definitely add to the Star Trek universe. So. Yep,
absolutely, and that's the coolest thing that these short treks have done, is it's introduced like this new format that was a foreign concept before. Like we never got anything like this before, and it's neat that there's a different method of there's a different kind of storytelling out there that isn't just TV show and occasional movie. Like they're pushing the envelope and trying completely different things to expand the universe in different kinds of ways. So short treks are a success, if you ask me. I think all around, it's because we're having conversations like this. Like it's like we're wishing we had them in the past for these other shows, so that we could get stuff like we just talked about. I think that's a pretty telling sign that they're a good thing and that they worked.
So one last point I'd like to make before we start wrapping this episode 73, I believe, is that these short treks, the more that I thought about it, and this kind of ties into my kind of Star Trek content ending kind of segment we do, is these short treks, to me, are fan films. So I think that moving forward, I think it's cool that they're using that format, that fans have been using, short 15-minute movies that kind of add to the Star Trek universe. I think it would be cool to have more fan films. I know there's very strict guidelines, but keep doing short treks. If CBS doesn't, we definitely take the reins. I feel like this kind of format definitely started to me with fan films and stuff like that. So I think it's cool that the fan films are kind of evolving into something like the short treks. So I think that we should also support fan films as well as short treks. So that's my little spiel.
It's a really good point. That's the kind of thing that has been around for a long time, and that it's a feasible way for fans to tell stories. These short, and a lot of them were very simple. Like Calypso is very simple, like on one set of sets, two people, two characters, like very simple kinds of stories that are you're right, they are very fan filmy, and given these new guidelines where they have to be under a certain length, 15 minutes, I think, which is right around where these things are. I think it kind of goes to show that people should be encouraged to keep doing it and to not feel like, oh, those guidelines are there. There's no point in doing it. Like, you can tell a great story. Look at Calypso. Calypso is completely removed. I mean, it's on the Discovery and there are little ties, but it's 2 characters that we've never seen before. It's told in 15 minutes. It's powerhouse. It's great. It adds to there's cool Star Trek stuff in it. It works on its own. This goes to show that people, I think, should be encouraged to, keep doing it. Keep that alive. Don't stop. CBS is making track. Like, everybody can still do their thing.
Yeah.
And add to the universe in their own way.
Yeah, and I think that like 6 months ago, Trek Live Dan, I was so bitter about these guidelines and all these things and taking away great Trek, and especially with, on the coat trails of what happened with Axanar. It's like, but now I'm like, no, this is great. This is awesome. We can tell a story and add to the Star Trek universe and make, great Star Trek content in those guidelines. So.
Yeah, I think those guidelines even kind of maybe they sort of I was in the same boat as you. I wasn't with it when it all went down.
Right.
Because I loved, like, Star Trek Continues, for example. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
A lot. It filled that gap when there wasn't Discovery. With some new Star Trek stuff. But maybe it does kind of lower the level of the playing field. If you and I lived near each other, I would be all for trying to do a Star Trek. Trying to put something together and do it and work with you to do something like that. But you and I might not have the resources to do something like Star Trek Continues, with like these 50-minute, like, real hardcore episodes. But a 15-minute short, like, we could probably do that with our resources and try to pull something together and do something. And if it, like, encourages people to kind of all operate on the same sort of wavelength and encourages everybody more people to do it and contribute to it, then maybe that's a good thing. I hope people keep doing it and take advantage of, capitalizing on the limitations that the guidelines have. You can't do certain things, but these short treks have definitely shown that, you can tell a really good story in 15, 20 minutes.
And this is not me. This is not Bill and I letting CBS CBS off with, a pass or anything like that. I think that we just gotta take it for what it is and make awesome track.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So you've listened to any Star Trek content or watched any or?
I listened to The Edge. Like I always tend to do. Talk about The Escape Artist, their live show. I listened to that. Trek Ranks just came out with an episode on Enterprise, underrated Enterprise. I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm anxious to. I listened to Trek Geeks over the holidays. They did 2, actually. Came out like right in that hiatus period for us.
Yeah.
They did a See It or Skip It for DS9, 6 and 7. Really enjoyed both of them. What else? I know I listened to something. There's a new Primitive Culture that I haven't listened to yet, but it's in my queue.
I did listen to it. You guys know that I'm a big Kirk fan, so definitely have to check that out. That's a good episode to get back into that podcast. The reason why I brought up the fan film thing is my Star Trek content that I want to talk about is, if you go to the Action, our YouTube page, they're gonna have updates on the production, the final. They're gonna do a 2 episode 15-minute segment to appease to the guidelines that have been set forth. But so there's a bunch of like behind the scenes content that you can definitely check out. On Axanar, because I'm a huge fan. And you should be too.
Still alive and kicking.
Yep.
There's a lot of good stuff out there that is sitting in my queue that I haven't. Jordan's late, but saying a fan film would be fun. absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm hoping to, now that I'm kind of in this Trek headspace again with Discovery coming and back into the routine of the new year with back to work and
footballs.
I'm hoping to football's kind of starting to whittle down a little bit. I'm hoping to hammer home some of these podcasts that are sitting in my queue.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess we'll start wrapping up. It's been episode 73 of Trek Live. We'll be back next week for more Star Trek content. And then we'll be diving into Discovery later on. Might be back tomorrow with some STO. Not sure yet. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Come over to Discord. Great conversations to be had in there. Same with Twitter. That's probably our biggest spot we do, discussions and stuff. Definitely check that out. Links in the description. We will see you guys next weekend.
Yep. Thanks for watching.